In the spotlight tonight, where is Mitt Romney's money? It's a question we've been asking on this program for months.
Well, where is your money? Is it parked offshore? And how much of it have you not yet paid taxes on? And I really think the most important question is, how much of that money went offshore without ever being taxed? Did you make use of offshore vehicles in order to defer or not pay taxes?
These are very important questions, and I think there is now a challenge to the media in the questions that you just outlined. This week, that challenge is being answered by Vanity Fair and the Associated Press, both of which published investigative reports about Romney's assets, particularly a Bermuda corporation wholly owned by W. Mitt Romney. The Sankaty High Assets Investors Limited was transferred to a blind trust owned by Ann Romney the day before her husband was sworn in as Massachusetts governor in 2003. It was not listed on his federal financial disclosure forms. We only know about it because of the one tax return Mitt Romney has released from 2010. And even Vanity Fair concedes after examining this return, we have no idea what is in this company. Meanwhile, Mitt Romney is taking the week off from stumping about economic woes to vacation at his $10 million estate on Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire, much to the horror of the Wall Street Journal editorial board, which today says the Obama campaign is assailing Mr. Romney as an out-of-touch rich man, and the rich man obliged the vacationing by vacationing this week at his lakeside home with a jet ski cameo. Joining me now are Ezra Klein, Washington Post columnist and MSNBC contributor, and Karen Finney, former DNC communications director and an MSNBC political analyst. This is the key line from the Vanity Fair piece. It says, Romney failed to list this Bermuda entity on several financial disclosures, even though such a closely held entity would not qualify as an accepted investment fund that would not need to be on his disclosure forms. So, Karen Finney, there's Mitt Romney hiding his money offshore and then hiding on disclosure forms that he's hiding his money offshore.
Right. That's exactly right. And here's the problem. If you put these stories together with what David Corn reported last week, the picture that continues to emerge here is clearly he's got something to hide. And it becomes easier on the outside to say, well, what are you hiding? And the evidence seems to mount. And the campaign has no answers. In fact, as we've seen, they kind of are cutting and pasting the same answer to everything. And at some point, that's just not going to cut the mustard. So at some point, they're going to have to come clean and be more forthcoming with, all those questions that you've been pointing out for several weeks now.
Ezra, we have a big board graphic up here, a map of the world with where some locations we know Mitt Romney's money is: Australia, Switzerland, Germany, Ireland, Luxembourg, Cayman Islands, Bermuda. All but Germany have question marks on them because we actually have no idea how much money is in those places. We've never seen a candidacy like this. Is there some mature, reasonable way that a good candidate could explain this?
Well, it's interesting to be banking with Carmen Sandiego. It doesn't happen much. I agree on that. But the thing that I think is going to be difficult for Romney here, they've explained it, I think, in this way. It is legal. There might be gray areas, but it's legal. You can't actually prosecute me for doing that. And this, I think, is getting to a broad problem for the Romney campaign, which is that it's legal what he did with his tax money. And it's legal to make a lot of money going into companies, loading them up with debt, taking a dividend out, and then closing them down. And it's legal to invest in outsourcing companies that make money. It's all legal. It just, nobody has to like you for it. Nobody has to want you to be their president for it. Nobody has to think it makes you a good guy. You're allowed to make a bunch of money without getting a big moral sort of trophy at the end of it. And so the problem they're having is that success isn't enough for people. People want to see values identified there too. And when you've taken advantage of every single loophole in the tax code, people begin to think, that's not what I would do.
And the Washington Post quoted a tax expert and an offshore tax expert describing Romney's stuff as just weird. And that's from a guy who understands it all. And Karen, this guy's been running for president his entire life. His father said to him, gave him the advice, get rich before you run for president so you'll be able to afford it. You won't have to worry about money in any way. He got very, very, very rich. But there's ways to get rich in this country where you don't have this problem. You can get very rich without parking it all offshore.
Well, that's exactly right. But here's what I think is the challenge for Democrats. And there's two things. Number one, to continue to press these questions. Number two, we've got to connect this for voters back to why it matters to them. So tomorrow, when those job numbers come out, when Mitt Romney's campaign is attacking President Obama and attacking this economy, we need to be able to, finish that circle and say, well, look, when you've got people, those one percenters like Mitt Romney, extracting resources from this country, hiding it offshore, those are resources that are not being reinvested into companies. They're not being used to increase wages. And those are also tax resources that are not going back into firefighters, police, teachers. I mean, I think we've got to really kind of connect those dots for people, because I think too many people accept that, one percenters, there's going to be a bit of corruption, even if it's or legal sort of, different set of rules. But how does it affect you is what people want to know.
I want to get my quote right about this Washington lawyer. It was actually in the Vanity Fair piece, where it says a full 55 pages of his 2010 tax return are devoted to reporting his transactions with foreign entities. What Romney does not get, says Jack Blum, a veteran Washington lawyer and offshore expert, is that this stuff is weird. And Ezra, that is the sensation that I'm getting from Romney in Romney World, is they don't think there's anything strange about this.
Well, here's what I can't figure out about it for the life of me. It is Mitt Romney's father, George Romney, who began the tradition of releasing tax returns. He released 12 years, saying one could be a fluke. Mitt Romney did not release 12 years of tax returns. So far, he's released, to my knowledge, one. And so what I don't get is 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and Mitt Romney knew he'd be running for president again, so it'd be 4 years ago, why did he not clean all this up? Why did he not take all this money, wipe out these accounts, just bring it all onshore, and release 2 years of tax returns in which everything is clear and simple? There's a surprising kind of level of arrogance for that. And I just can't figure out why some political consultant or just he himself didn't think, let's just make this not a problem for me going forward.
Well, that's part of the out of touch thing. He's out of touch with real politics. In 1994, when he started his run for the presidency by running for the Senate in Massachusetts, from that year forward, everyone around Romney should have said, hey, let's get the tax returns squeaky clean, because everybody's going to want to take a look at those.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And
Karen,
go for it.
You know what I was going to say? It's also a very corporate CEO mentality that doesn't acknowledge that there's an accountability to the rest of us, right? The CEO says, I don't have to show you that. I will show you to the letter of the law, but doesn't understand that, you know what, people who are going to vote for you, you're a little bit accountable to them, too.
Yeah, and those CEOs are only trying to make themselves understood to other CEOs, and they all get it. They all have no problems about Cayman Islands money. Ezra Klein and Karen Finney, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Some conservatives like Jonah Goldberg and Ann Coulter actually keep insulting young voters, saying that they shouldn't be allowed to vote and that the voting age should be raised, which the Obama campaign hopes just might help drive some young voters to the polls to vote Democratic. That's coming up. And next, Tea Party Republican Congressman Joe Walsh's attacks on his opponent for being an Iraq War veteran land him in tonight's rewrite.